Okay, so the buttons below the preview image here in SSUV's rollout. I'm going to select this object and load it into the system. At this point, we see that this VC button is turned black. We can't click it or anything. It's just an alert flag. It's informing us that there's information in the vertex color channel 0, the explicit vertex color 0, right? Now, you can manage vertex color in other channels, but this is specific to 0. So if there is no vertex color data in explicit 0, this will not be flagged. All right. Sorry, I had to be very clear with that. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. If I select the sphere and load it into the system, you can see it does not have vertex color data in channel 0. Okay. So next we have material ID override. And this is not a true override in the sense of how Max handles material overrides. This is more of a user temporary override system. And it creates a material ID. It creates a material of submaterials. It's a multi-material. And it allows you to apply it to the object. And let's just do that real quick. Okay. So we have this set here with a material already on the object. Granted, it doesn't look very good. But what we can do here is left click to add the material ID temporary material. So you can see the material IDs here in the viewport. Now, it's not perfect. It's just a visual representation for your own purposes. The colors are not going to be perfect. You have to deal with those facets on your own in other ways. So this is just a visual aid helper, as well as we use it as a way to make UV mapping easier in some processes, but I'll get to those later. Those are in the handler section. Okay. So now that I have the override, the temporary user override type override here of material ID, how do I get my material back onto the object? Well, I right click. Okay. And what are we doing there? I need to inform you of this because there's an issue that you might encounter, and I need you to know how to get out of it. Okay. So what we have here is SSUV hold material for user. It specifies the material name. So we can left click and right click to our heart's extent, go from material ID back to the material. Okay. The issue comes in when you have multiple objects selected and you have multiple materials of the same name. So let's just say that, let's just throw this thing on here real quick. The video software is not allowing me to do that, so I apologize. Okay, so I went and added the material on my own. So I'm going to now name these materials the same thing. Be right back. Okay, so here we are with two objects. This has this material, this has this material, and this is named AAA, and this is named AAA. Okay, so let's get into what this looks like now. We have both of these objects selected. Okay. And this is a rare instance, but I need you to be aware just in case. If we left click, we get the material override. If we right click, we reapply the first material we find with that AAA name. Well, you can think to yourself, that's no good. That didn't work very well. Well, sure, but you should only work on one object at a time in that way. But if you wanted to and you ran into this situation, you can control right click to get this multiple material name browser. Now I can select this object and find my material for it. This one, and there we go. We're back to where we were. So we're good to go. Now moving on here, let's see, left click, right click. Okay, also Alt right click will remove the material from the object, but you can get that back by right clicking. However, since I have two objects selected, I'm back in that same material situation, right? There we go. We're fixed. Okay, so what do we have next? Is UV channel header. This is a button with a left click and a right click. I'm going to select all of these objects. They're an instanced modifier. I'm going to left click and right click. And you'll see here in the Max default map channel info browser that we have the object names stacked vertically, and then each name is displayed per map channel. So it's hard to visually filter this for which objects have which map channels if you need to make sure they're all on the same page with map channels, etc. So that's why this SSUV map channel dialog listing and data listing is shown here. So if we look at this, we have the object names. Then the first one would be vertex color data, but there is none. So those are just dashes with a semicolon, okay? Then we have channels 1, then space, then 3. And down here we see object 23 has channels 1, 2, 3. Okay? So if we wanted to, we can select that object there and then work on it and do what we need to do. And there you go. Now let me go over to this object with the vertex paint on it. And we will right click so you can get an idea here. Object 30, it says 0 with a colon and VC for the vertex color explicit channel. And here we are. That's what it is there. And then 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's great. Now you can print out selection of objects. Like here I have a sphere, but it is not an editable poly. And a lot of the features will also work with editable mesh, but we're focusing on editable poly. Okay, so we're going to select all these editable polys and then add in the sphere. Okay, now I'm going to open up that map channel data listing dialog. Okay, so I don't see my sphere listed. So what I can do is print non-poly objects to the listener. Okay. So a lot of the functions of SSUV will filter through the selection set as to not end up or resolve in a crash or breaking of the tool. So you have to restart the tool or max. Try to be as safe as possible with everything so that things just work and inform you instead of throwing an error box and frustrating you. Okay. So what we're going to do now is print non-editable poly objects from the selection, and that's going to be here. We have sphere. That's the object. Then we have the name. So we know that it is not an editable poly because it is sphere, right? And then the position that it's located in. Now we can't directly select it or anything because it's just printed to the listener. So you have your own ways of finding that. I know which one it is. I'm just going to take it and delete it like that. There you go. That is the vertex color button, the material ID user specific override system. Okay. And then UV channel specific dialogues. Next, we have the scene-wide default max override system. You can see here, if I turn on the checkers setting, the entire scene updates. I can right click to cycle through the checker types. If I left click, I get the fast shader. If I left click again, I turn off the material override system entirely. I am now going to go into the material override system and leave it on my favorite checker override material. And the reason for this is because I'm going to show you that we can display UV channels in the viewport, and we can either do it automatically based upon how we're using SSUV, or we can simply temporarily force the preview. And let's just do that real quick. So let's take this object and load it into the system. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I would like to preview channel 3 in the viewport. I can do that with this spinner. This will force that. Okay. There's channel 4, 3, 2, 1. And you see these other objects in the scene are turning a dark blue-green. That's because they don't have that map channel information to display. Okay. So if I'm on channel 4 for this object, it's not displaying it here, okay, unless I actually have that set. So let's do that too. We can add map channel 4 here, okay. We'll go back into this. And you notice that when I did something, it reverted to map channel 1 because the default view of max is map channel 1 for that material override. So we're forcing it out of that material override. Now, whenever we update here with the selection or change the selection, it's going to revert to max's default method. And I did that to avoid confusion with people. However, professional users are going to think that that's probably the confusing way and that this other way is better. Follow with me here. This top hat and magic wand, you can activate that. Okay. Now, once you activate that, whatever map channel is specified in the modifier will be automatically overridden and displayed in the viewport. Now remember, you have to have the material checker state turned on in order to use this override system. Okay? So there we go. We have channel 4. We click here. It's showing us channel 4 in the preview for SSUV. It's also showing us channel 4 in the viewport. That's great. So I'm going to select all of the faces, box map. And here we go. We have the preview of that UV channel here. It's UV channel 4. It's box mapped. And we see that in the viewport. Great. I'm going to collapse that down. I'm going to now add channel 3. Now I see channel 3 here in the viewport and in the preview panel. Okay, that looks good. I don't need to collapse it down, but I am just for the sake of it. I'm going to add channel 2. Yeah, channel 2 looks good. So channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 all pass inspection. That's great. Everything's perfect. I can now just go back to the default system for Macs, right? But how do I get that to register again? Well, you have to just update SSUV with another object. So you turn off the magic wand, and you can force this back to 1, or you can load an object in the system. Whoops. Make sure you have an object selected. Load it into the system, and it will automatically revert to channel 1. Okay? So that can be a little bit of a... You might have to fiddle to get used to it. That's basically what I'm getting towards. But you can view your map channels in the viewport now. Not that you couldn't before, but this just feels easier. Now let's move on to these map channel buttons. Okay. I have this object selected. If I'd like to add map channel 2, I'm going to turn that back on for now. I just left click the plus button. I get map channel 2, that's displayed. And since I have my magic wand turned on, it's displayed in the viewport as well. Great. I'll do 3 and 4. Wonderful. Let's just collapse all that down, deselect, and load the system. It's cleared out. I am now going to I right click this spinner and it will automatically set it to 1, just so you're aware. Some people might not know that about the spinners. If I select all of these objects over here, okay, let's load those in because we have an instance modifier. Now, let's say we want to add an instance modifier for channel 4. We right click that plus button. There you go. Let's go into polygon mode. Control A to select all. Well, let's just do smoothing group. It's going to take a moment. It's iterating through each one, so we need to give it a second here. All right, there we go. Now, I know waiting for things isn't so great sometimes, but this is a scripted tool. And you don't necessarily need to iterate through a scene like that. But if you are going to do something like that, say you did have a project where you had 1,000 objects and it didn't matter that all of them were smoothing grouped like that. You could just set that up, smoothing group, go to lunch, come back, and smoothing grouped. Okay. Let's continue in. Left click adds the modifier to a single selection. Right click adds the instance modifier. And I believe we've covered everything pretty good. Yeah, 14 minutes in for this video. Let's move on to the next because the packing section will be quick. Everything else will be quick from here. This section took a while to explain because this SSUV rollout is a lot of power packed into a small space. That's all.